Merge.
We must stop the terror. Now watch this drive.
Merge.
Welcome, one and all, to the Young Turks with me, John Arola, and in lieu of Cenk Uygur, who's off doing various things, Ramesh is back. Ramesh, what a nice treat. It's been, I guess, at least 4 months, considering the news that he sprung on me before. It's been a while, and I'm very glad to be doing the show with you. Welcome back, Ramesh.
Yeah, I missed you, John, but I've been watching what you all have been up to. Thank you for remaining courageous and having integrity in such difficult times.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So that I had to join you all from South India in the middle of the night, but I'm so happy to be back.
So that's why I'm probably gonna talk a little bit loud, and I'm gonna like move a lot to try to keep you awake, because it is the middle of the night. And so everybody watching, please bear that in mind, one and all. But regardless, great to have you here. And to get your perspective on all of this. And I think in particular, this is a rundown I think is really gonna tickle your intellectual fancy, I hope.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for being here. There is a lot that we're gonna be talking about through the course of today's show, including updated polling on what both Americans as well as people in a number of countries around the world think about what Israel is getting up to these days, as well as what the American military relationship should be with Israel. We'll be talking about that. We have a whole new round of tariffs going out. Trump picking fights once again with basically every ally that we've ever had. So that's fun as always. And Donald Trump, we're gonna talk about him on data centers. I think it's one of the low key most important issues that like people haven't really gotten how big of an issue it's becoming. And Donald Trump is going to prove to you that whatever capacity he used to have to read what people think about things is gone. There is no populism left. He doesn't care what people think about these issues, and we'll demonstrate that as well as other news too. There's a lot going on out there. So yeah, we'll be responding to your comments during the social breaks. With all that said, Ramesh, you ready to do this thing?
Absolutely, I'm right here with you. Especially with the data centers, I'm licking my chops right now. That woke me up.
That's actually the one that I'm most excited to get your perspective on. So we'll get to that very soon. But first, let's start off with this.
There are some absolutely huge, mammoth changes, generational changes that we're talking about. And I think there are a lot of Republicans, we'll be able to run against these anti-Israeli Democrats once we hit the general election, because the general electorate feels very differently from the Democratic base. But the general electorate, look at these numbers on Israel, the net favorability. They're all negative. They're all negative. Ipsos minus 10 points, Fox minus 11 points, Marquette University Law School Law poll. Look at that, minus 20 points. Pew Research Center, minus 23 points. Negative, 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 negative.
Negative, negative, negative. But potentially a positive development if you think that this is a relationship that has needed some changing. And certainly the polls are changing fast. And as Harrington points out, this is not just a thing of like members of the DSA or whatever. This is a pretty broad-based phenomenon. And we want to give you just a little bit more of the historic context, some of the trends that are being observed in this polling.
We're not just talking about the Democratic base anymore. We're talking about the general electorate as well. The general electorate has turned against Israel. This is not just a left issue, it is an American issue when it comes to opinions on Israel.
What's the trend line here?
What's the trend line here? The trend line is unbelievable. Look at the trend line here. Compare this to Donald Trump's first term. At this point in Donald Trump's first terms, Israel's average net favorability.
Wow.
You go back here, look at this. It was plus 51 points. Wow, Johnny says. Wow, Johnny says, because this is wow, plus 51. It's minus 16 points in the average poll now. That is what, a 67-point shift against Israel in just 8 years.
That is a pretty epic decline. I've tried to come up with similar polling declines, and All I've got is maybe John Fetterman. That's about the only thing I can think of in terms of a precipitous drop over just a couple of years, but it's huge. And obviously those have been a busy few years where Israel's military has been concerned, obviously chiefly with the ongoing genocide and ethnic cleansing of Gaza, but also invasions of bombings of a sprinkling of countries throughout the region. And this has been filtering through the media, as well as social media, alternative media. So people see what's going on. And again, it is not just, he says it's not just the Democratic base. I want to remind everyone a pattern that I have noticed that I don't think has been really acknowledged by the media, which is whenever you take a question of public polling and then you break it down to Democrats, independents, and Republicans, the independents aren't halfway between the two. That's just not how it works. The independents look pretty much like the Democrats, but I'll allow Harrington his little rhetorical flourish there. This is a pretty big change, and Ramesh, I'm sure that you're not really surprised by it necessarily. You've seen the polling, but what do you make of it?
I mean, we're sitting in the United States through a less and less healthy economy by the moment, right? People are not able to find jobs. They're not able to secure income. They're not able to, magic word these days, thanks to Zoran, our boy Zoran, afford their lives. In the meantime, people are seeing the so-called investments that our government is taking and the lies that were told to us about where the government and where the administration and where the president would be putting his priorities. And we're seeing the exact opposite, right? We're seeing all of the money, attention, power go into these directions that are not only morally repugnant and reprehensible, which we've known since October, shortly after October 7th. We talked about this years ago, John. Unbelievable that this is still going, but we're seeing a foreign government be the source of our money, our aid, our power, and we're seeing all of that being taken away from us more and more and more. So obviously, and pretty clear analysis, including stuff you guys have reported, showed that the moral stain, the moral cowardice that we exhibited in the United States in allowing a genocide to keep going. I'm talking about in the context of the Biden-Harris administration and in Harris's run, sort of in kind of Crown's run shortly after Biden finally dropped out. We've seen, thanks to technology as well, what has really been going on there. And we're wondering why all this money and power is going to aid a reprehensible, repugnant, right-wing terrorist government in the state of Israel that has been using all of this to kill innocent people. And in the meantime, people are like, I can't afford anything. I can't get a job. I can't keep a job because in some cases, being replaced by AI. I can't afford my healthcare. And so you just are sitting through these sort of divergent realities and you're wondering what gives. And so many of us for a long time have found, the actions of the Israeli state to be repugnant and reprehensible for decades in my case. But at the same time, now, the what is hitting the fan. So yeah. We're just seeing what's going on around them and they're wondering, what is it all for? And who is it all for?
Yeah, it would have been great if, I don't know, maybe if we had all collectively woken up a little bit earlier, it wouldn't have taken a genocide to get to this point. And maybe had we woken up, they wouldn't have had the genocide. If they had not had the United States under multiple administrations saying that what we're seeing is okay, then maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe they wouldn't have felt free to do it. And there is a measurable cost in human lives to that. So that is deeply unfortunate. I suppose politically, the silver lining, I guess, is that some people are waking up and maybe that can change actions, that might or might not take place in the future. But it is a big change. And it took not only the situation on the ground, but it took some people being willing to talk about it. And I saw in the chat, Octo Squiddy says, the paradox of the far left is being consistently correct on every issue and being told we're radicals until the rest of the population catches up. And while I don't think we've been right on every issue, it is kind of annoying when everybody finally catches up to the stuff that some of the politicians or media figures or whatever, activists have been talking about for a long time. And then when they catch up, there is never any acknowledgement of it. Hillary Clinton finally signs on to like same-sex marriage, and then it's just like, well, why are you hassling me about this? It's boring. Everybody supports this, but you didn't. Last year you didn't. Climate change is a very similar issue. $15 minimum wage. Like you can go down to hyper-specific economic issues, and there's never any acknowledgement. But regardless, it's changing, and I guess that's a good thing. By the way, in the same one of the polls that Harrington was talking about there, in terms of what you do with this change in favorability, well, one of the questions was whether military aid should be reduced or ended, and 55% said yes to that. Now that's a combined reduced/ended. That doesn't mean that 55% say there should be no military aid. So if that is a goal of yours, then there's probably more work to be done to move those numbers even more, particularly when the politicians are always going to be more resistant to it than regular people. And so you're going to need overwhelming public support to have any chance of getting through to these politicians, many of whom have been bought by interested parties in this. But I also wanted to throw out, before more of your commentary, I mentioned I want to talk about what the rest of the world thinks about the actions of Israel these days. And if you take a look at this is, I think, 32 countries. Not all of them are net negative. There are some that are narrowly positive. I think it's looking like Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana are more likely to be positive towards Israel, but the vast majority of others, this is across the United States, across Asia, a number of South and Latin American countries as well. And yeah, it's because everybody has, for the most part, has the internet. Everybody can see what's going on, and there are fewer filters than there used to be. There's not no filters, but there's fewer filters. And so I don't know if that maybe makes some Americans feel a little bit better about the situation, but the message is getting out around the world.
Yeah, just as a simple example of it, we've seen how as soon as TikTok was acquired by the Ellisons, right? Larry Ellison and his son, who is of course trying to strangle our media via Paramount, and which owns CBS. We saw a massive number of people flock away from TikTok, and especially Gen Z folks, and and move toward other platforms that are trying to show, quote unquote, the truth more as it actually is. Like Upscrolled is a remarkable example of that, which is just trying to show things as they actually are. But I think just the bigger question that maybe many of us are sitting with are, the only reason why these genocidal actions have and continue to occur is our country, is the United States. And there's a level of shame and embarrassment, even though we know it's not our direct doing, that is part of all of this. And so many of us feel and felt powerless to try to stop it. But at least we realize now more and more that this is just we can't let it happen any longer. So I mean, it's time for real leaders to rise up and call things out as they are, and devote actually their money and attention to the actual concerns that face working people.
Yeah, 100%. I just want to briefly mention, it is interesting. We're going to talk about data centers a little bit later on today, and I'm going to tie that to Donald Trump's either lack of ability or lack of interest in representing what even right-leaning independents or conservatives think anymore. But you're seeing a similar sort of thing here, where we're still in this forever war with Iran. He's not backing out of it, as unpopular as it is. I do think that he's understanding the polling a little bit, in that in the earlier phase of the war, there was a lot more talk about joint operations with Israel. I don't really hear that anymore. Now I hear about us bombing them. So he still is, like, if you believe that he's doing the bidding of Benjamin Netanyahu, he is still doing it. But he seems to be just savvy enough to know that he shouldn't talk about it or brag about it. He leaked that story of him like dropping an F-bomb at Netanyahu, and that was the last I really heard about their relationship. I don't know, I would have to balance, you swore at the guy with you're still fighting his war. I don't really feel like we came out on top in that bargain. But anyway, it's just something to think about, that they're not talking about that as much. And I would also say, it's great that the public opinion has changed. Bear in mind, we still have Donald Trump for a couple of years. That is a couple more years for whatever this vicious ethnic cleansing that continues to go on in Gaza, with the end goal of creating some sort of international oligarch beach party or whatever. That's a couple more years of work going towards that, and Trump's board of peace looking the other way. And so I wonder, where is public opinion going to be at once that period is over, and how much can actually be done to stop the ongoing horrors? Anyway, quick thoughts, Rash.
one direct linkage between all of this is people realize that it's the connections to Israel that led us directly into this war that the president was very willing and happy to engage in. And it's the connections also to Israel that is leading to things like this Saudi deal, for example, the attempt to reestablish things like the Abraham Accords in a whole new direction. And because of the interface or the point of Israel connecting to this Iran war, people are directly realizing the material impact of that on their gas prices and other prices like that. But I think outside of simply being sort of self-oriented in terms of how much things cost and so on, people are wondering, again, what is it all for? How does this serve American interests, let alone moral interests? And the big question here, John, is, yes, we can be just completely against the president on every level, but do we actually have power? Because ultimately, if you look at the Board of Peace, this is very chilling, John. It's the East India Tea Company in a new form, which is a private corporation or set of board members, literally the same words, that are attempting to colonize a space built upon the genocide of its native peoples. Yeah. And God help us, that stuff occurred in the 1600s, man. I'm right here in India. People are still feeling the effects of colonial histories here in India, believe it or not. That's hundreds of years later, 400 years later or so, approximately. So it's a moral scourge of our time, and we got to do everything we can with whatever levers of power we have to stop it at all costs.
Before we jump to our break, I just want to mention, I have been seeing the stories going around of polling in the upcoming Israeli elections. Most recently, only 33% of Israelis say that Netanyahu is the best candidate to be prime minister. And so that is a reminder that the country can change course. There's nothing baked into the DNA or the concrete of a country that you have to continue down a path that's causing basically the entirety of the rest of the world to hate your guts. And by the way, we went through this. People around the world hated America under George W. Bush. Sorry, what are you gonna say?
No, sorry, man. I was just gonna say, though, most of the other competing candidates are incredibly imperialistic in their views and very Zionistic. That's
sure, 100%. Yeah, I'm just saying, like you could find a person. Like if you see the polling of what the American people think about Israel, whatever, and you don't like that. Spoiler alert, just telling us to not care about the deaths that's not gonna work. You could do that 5 more times, 100 more times, 1,000 more times. That's not gonna work. Just objectively, it's failed. You should stop that strategy. It's a terrible one. But if you actually change the policy, then maybe the international perceptions of your country can follow. As I was saying, like, our disastrous war in Iraq and all of that caused a lot of people to hate us. But George W. Bush was not America. A lot of Americans never supported that war, and we decided to go in a different direction. Now we're back in another forever war, so obviously the war continues, but it's just something to bear in mind. Okay, with that said, we're gonna take a short break. There's a lot more to get to after this.
I love cows.
The guy just loves cows. Anyway, let's jump into some comments, everybody. Dirge says in the members' comments, John, I asked on Damage Report, but I'll ask again. Will we ever see you at Gen Con again? Sorry, I didn't see that on Damage Report. I would love to go again. I went a couple years in a row before the pandemic, and then that sort of killed it. And then I had my daughter. Maybe someday I can bring my daughter. I am hoping to train her into a world-class board gamer and role player, but I don't know. Unless I'm bringing my daughter, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go for a week to a board game convention anytime soon, so unfortunately. Okay, Asimov's Prophet says, I think Ramesh is what Cenk would be like if he was really high. And I think that means calm. Like if Cenk was like, calm. There you go. Anyway.
John, can I say something there?
What?
Sometimes I get a couple comments. For whatever reason, people always think I'm Ro Khanna, no matter where I go. I was like, if only I was that smooth. And the other one's like, you're that chill dude who is sometimes on the Young Turks, huh? You're that chill.
You are the chill dude. I get that. I don't get Ro Khanna. You guys are pretty, I mean, you're both deeply interested in
Brown.
policy, I guess. Well, sure, but like your voices don't sound the same. You don't look the same anyway. Anyway, Nerd Ferguson says it's 3 a.m. in India. That's the same time our president posts on social media. Well, I imagine there's probably multiple time zones spanning the entire. Oh, we're running out of time, unfortunately. Okay, more news.
How low can you go?
So in the break, we were talking about how a viewer said that you're what Cenk would be if he was really high and relaxed. Someone in the chat says, John, a less passionate Cenk. That's a worse version of what we said about Ramesh. That's just a net bad thing. Thank you, by the way. Anyway, okay, well, we do have a lot of news.
Passionate, just in the twilight zone here, but in a weird sort of trippy way, I'm able to like channel my thoughts pretty directly. And I bet right when I go back to sleep after this, it's going to be in my dreams. You know?
You're in sort of like a flow state. Well, we're gonna get to the news in just a sec. First, though, I did want to check in with you, not only on your own brain rot. It's something that in this digital age we're all struggling with, but it's possible that your kids might be developing it too. Take a look at them. Are they in the room with you? Are they on their phones right now? Well, you can help to track their phone usage and potentially save you and your family a little bit of money using the No Mobile Life app. We've been talking about how you can track your brain rot index. You can actually set up a family leaderboard that tracks how much you're each using your phone. And then potentially, like I said, save some money. You get cash back for not using your data and all that. Details and more available at tyt.com/switch. Okay, with that, let's jump into more awesome moves by Donald Trump. Trump has announced a new global tariff, this time targeting our greatest enemies. And by that I mean all of our allies, or at least formerly our allies. I don't know if that'll last much longer, but he has in fact ushered in a new round of tariffs against 80 different countries. That's replacing the previous 10% tariff that he put on them. Hey everybody, it's John and Ramesh is here as well. Apologies, apparently the Trump administration found out that we were going to be saying bad things about data centers and so they took down our stream or whatever. But we're back up, so I think we're going to be okay. Why don't we jump back into this? As I was saying, Donald Trump has launched a new round of global tariffs, 10% on, I don't know, like half the countries in the world or whatever. Many of them are longtime economic and military allies. It's 10 to 12.5% on the UK, Mexico, Canada, Australia, India, China, all 27 countries that make up the EU and dozens of others besides. And in enacting these tariffs, his excuse is that this is, he needs to use Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, targeting countries who use forced labor. This is just because he cares so passionately about the forced labor that Canada and the UK use. That's why he needs to do this, not because he fundamentally misunderstands what tariffs are and how inflation works. It's the forced labor thing. But anyway, many of these countries, including again, our long-term allies, are not happy about this. Australia and Brazil described the new tariffs as unjustified and said they would seek to have them removed, while Norway's foreign minister said there was no basis for the new tariffs. Australia said these tariffs are unjustified, inconsistent with our free trade agreement, and should be removed. Australia's measures to combat forced labor and modern slavery are among the strongest in the world, and we are recognized globally, including in the US, for our leadership. You have Taiwan, Malaysia, India, and Indonesia also have these 10% tariffs. It's basically all over the place. And Ramesh, I don't know. I don't buy that forced labor has literally anything to do with this. I think this is just a flimsy legal justification to stop the Supreme Court from knocking them down once again. But I don't know. What do you think's going on?
I think it's just, I mean, as this administration proceeds, we've gone more and more away from any sort of actual response to, perceived or supposed response to any actual real life issue or economic issue, right? So like you remember back in the day, Trump 1.0, a little bit in the run up to Trump 2.0, there was sort of a discussion appropriately of how workers in the United States and actually we just as consumers are no longer able to afford our jobs, able to keep work, find work and so on. And so much of that was supposedly blamed on the inequalities tied to global neoliberal politics and neoliberal economics, right? So like big corporations running the world, robbing us all. So let's push back against all that. That's what we were talking about on the Sanders campaign in 2020. That's what we've been all looking at for decades in the making. So there's this sort of, this idea that Trump would actually represent some pushback in relation to all that, and that tariffs were part of the way out of that. It doesn't work at all, right? Because tariffs actually do not work because the global economy is so deeply interconnected. And that's outside of talking about the delusional ramblings of a madman who worships the Gilded Age. For those of you all, read F. Scott Fitzgerald and The Great Gatsby, or look at the examples of the Gilded Age, which Trump worships, right? Which was a time when nation states had sort of fiefdoms over different areas of influence around the world. Believe it or not, John, I don't know if you know this, the inequality levels today that we're staring at are 3 times more pronounced than the Gilded Age. Yet the president is doubling down on those same sort of anachronistic ideas that have no relevance or salience at all to the way globalized economies function. But I think in the case of Canada in particular, this is just all about a pathetic desire to one up or get back Mark Carney because of his speech at Davos, where he talked about taking on a new path because of Canada's relationships with China, with electric vehicles, for example. And this is sort of, and obviously with Brazil, there's an attempt to just kind of go after Lula and his, sort of, in my opinion, actual leadership, one of the few like really good leaders that exist now in the world. So it's all just petty party. It's petty party, and no longer. By the way, this is really what we're sitting through now with Israel, with Iran, with all of these things. No longer is there even any attempt to try to tie these actions to some grievance. It doesn't matter anymore, because actually the goal of the administration is for us to not believe in anything or care about anything or trust anything, and it's just feeding off of nihilism. And I think that's the bigger question that's about what's going on, and that's quite something to sit through, man.
Yeah, to the extent that there's any reference of grievance, it's the vaguest thing you can imagine. They've taken advantage of us.
That's right.
That's it.
Decoupled. Yeah.
That's literally nothing. And look, and I think like just ideologically, they want their base to look around the world and see nothing but enemies. They want us to feel alone. Donald Trump is the literal only person you can trust. You can't even trust freaking Canada at this point. It's pathetic. And I wrote about that on my Substack this week. This need for, even comical villains. That's what they're doing. And you referenced Canada. Obviously, he put those 50% tariffs on Canadian imports, including wine, hockey sticks, cement. Not like a housing crisis or anything. We don't need to build stuff, right? Dairy products, plywood, paper, and furniture. They said that those taxes were punishments for Canadian discrimination against 3 US industries: motor vehicles, dairy, and alcohol. But again, the stupid self-destructive way that we work is, so he needs to strike back against Mark Carney for his speech at Davos or whatever, but Mark Carney's only saying that because of the things Donald Trump keeps attacking him, including with tariffs and rhetorically talking about it being a 51st state. So now we need these tariffs as punishment for their discrimination against our industries, but they launched some of these because we put tariffs on them.
John, you
sucker. The cycle we're in?
Exactly, man. Like, you sucker punch your brother, like your best buddy, in the face, and they're like, "Oh, okay, we gotta be careful here, and we don't want to get punched in the face again. We got to figure out what we're gonna do here." Said in this like nice, fancy Mark Carney language,
Yeah.
Very formally and nice. But these are really materially felt issues. So, like, I've spent some time in British Columbia and other parts of Canada since Trump 2.0 has taken over, and you won't see American goods on many of the shelves out there. American companies are suffering. Obviously, American workers are suffering. But also, check this out: border towns, like right across the border, for example, in Washington State, where I was not too long ago, they're just completely dried up because they were all dependent on the flow of people. Because Canadians are our brothers and sisters, and we all know that. And we all kind of grew up together, and this is just insane.
Yeah, and the issue is, like we focus on like case studies, like the reflecting pool, but you look out there over this last year and a half, it's all a reflecting pool. You combine a complete unwillingness to do research or even basic thought before doing something, and then when you do it and it blows up in your face, he also can't admit that. And he can't backtrack when he's done something terrible. And so, it affects reflecting pool. It also reflects wars, and it reflects worldwide trade schemes that he's set up. Because again, he does not, nor has he ever understood how tariffs work or what effects they have. He doesn't understand it at all. He doesn't understand human nature on how other countries will respond to it. He totally overestimates how much leverage economically we actually have over countries like Canada or the EU or whatever. And so, exactly like the shutting down of the Strait of Hormuz, the way that these countries have responded to his tariffs was not only predictable, it was predicted. The actual experts knew that this was going to happen, but the experts have no place in the Trump administration.
And I'm sitting here in India, and tariffs were levied here, and people are like, "What? What's going on?" Because people really look up to the United States, or at least they looked up to the United States. People want to study in the United States. They want to go to UCLA, like where I teach, this type of thing. And the reason why the tariffs were put on India, at least at various points, was simply because Trump said he solved India-Pakistan crises, and in India they were like, actually, you had nothing really to do with it. And that's Modi saying that, the Prime Minister of India, who is not a popular figure here in South India, where I am right now at all. But at the same time, this is it. So global inequalities tied to being led by corporate elite oligarchic power can be stopped by protecting workers, but it's not about random, sort of B-slap, sucker punch tariffs that go nowhere and just create more and more enmity. And at the end of the day, endanger we Americans at the end of the day as well, on many levels, especially economically.
Yeah, 100%. Tariffs raise the price of the goods that we import, and there's a lot that we import. That was true when we were saying it before he launched them. It's still true. It's not the only reason that inflation has been so bad under Donald Trump, but it's a significant one. It is one that he could easily get rid of if he were just man enough to admit that he was wrong, but he can't do that. And I don't know to what extent this is a portion of it, but let's also not forget that everything is corruption in this administration. The tariffs, like with his war, it's endless opportunities for him to add tariffs, lower tariffs, and then benefit from the insider knowledge of his ability to do that. As well as, by the way, in multiple cases, he's been able to get sweet deals for the Trump organization in return for taking away tariffs. So it's, in addition to all of the other stupid reasons for this, it's also deeply, deeply corrupt. Anyway, any other thoughts before we move on?
It's brazen. It's in our face. It's obvious to everybody what's going on. Look how much his family and his cronies have benefited from all of this. And but I think on some level he just doesn't. They just don't care anymore. They just don't care. They're just trusting on us, not on all of us, just being not believing in anything or anybody. And our dear DNC leadership has led us to pasture here.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if you heard about the Saudi development deal that him and his organization just set up. Like, I don't know, if you've just gotten $63 billion, I don't think you have to care about anything at that point. It's not even that big of a news story, by the way. The more corruption in one act than maybe every corrupt thing a president has ever done combined into one. And his side won't even care. That's the depressing side. Okay, we have more, including on the long-term impact this is probably gonna have on our relationship with Canada, but obviously via my tech problems, we've lost a little bit of time. So why don't we take our second break? We'll come back with 2 more topics to talk about in this hour.
Ruh-roh.
Okay, one and all, let's do a social break. Dandeta Dragon says in the members' comments, LMAO, Chilljank is hilarious. I do like that. Okay. Bloated Ego says, doesn't that proposed nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia and the retroactive attempt to amend it prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this war had nothing to do with us not wanting or caring if Iran got a nuclear weapon? It was because Israel didn't want it and duped some idiot to fight his war for him. I think that it proves, or at least hints at, a lot of stuff. I think it's fascinating to do that literally as they're saying we need this endless war with Iran over nuclear, power or whatever. But and again, but it's utter corruption. They negotiated their real estate deal at the exact same time that they were negotiating this. Just throw the entire family in jail. I cannot believe that this is legal. Remember when they were mad because they thought that Hunter Biden had gotten $5 million from China and then couldn't prove it, but they were still mad about it? The $5 million? How do you like $63 billion? Anyway, okay. Art Guy says, things are extraordinary when Harry Enton's voice goes all squeaky. Woo! Oh my God, he's ready to go with that. Ruh-roh. Down with the Titanic. Octosquiddy says that worse than when Coca-Cola put out new Coke. Oh, something about a football announcer? Did I miss something about football announcers? Maybe it's from yesterday, I'm not sure. Damn, these social breaks are so brief. We'll be right back. I now know the 2 teams that are in the Super Bowl. Welcome back to what remains of the first hour of the Young Turks with Ramesh and myself. Thank you for being here. Let's jump into the data centers.
You look at some places, you take a look at California, you have brownouts and blackouts every weekend. The last thing they're going to be able to do is supply electric at numbers. Nobody's ever explained to me why it's so much electricity, why you need so much, nor did I care that much, to be honest with you. All I know is you need more than double what we produce right now. Think of it. So we produce tremendous amounts of electricity for every business, and this industry needs more than double that amount.
So it's a pretty baffling announcement when Donald Trump comes out and says, hey, that growing rage about data centers that has already captured the majority of Democrats, the majority of independents, an increasing percentage of Republicans. Yeah, I actually love that. And we're going to double down on that even more. And it's fascinating in that video that he admits that years into this issue, he doesn't know why data centers use so much electricity. And he apparently hasn't thought to ask. He doesn't care. But admittedly, he doesn't have to care. He knows what he needs to know, which is that he knows what his owners need him to do, which is protect them, stop regulations of them, and allow them to continue to build these data centers no matter what people think in communities across America. That is clear. And he says in his larger announcement, he's finally letting them build their own electricity. Are you not merciful? And did you not know that they could always do that? They could have always done that. They chose not to do it and will not do it until they are required to do it. And although the event that Donald Trump is speaking at is ostensibly one in which they're all pledging to produce their own electricity so that your electricity rates don't go up, it is just a pledge. Donald Trump is not requiring them to build it. And so I'm gonna be so bold as to say they're not going to, and the electricity prices will continue to rise. But anyway, it's a big issue. And for a lot of reasons, electricity is only one of them, but that's one of the, I think, easiest to grasp issues with the data center expansion. Ramesh, why don't you jump in, tell me what you think.
We're seeing a widespread backlash across supposed partisan lines, because I think also on so many levels, John, it's not about partisanship, it's about elites versus the rest of us. I think that's becoming painfully clear, and the president is a servant of the elites and a massive elite himself, right? It's just a few oligarchs and it's the rest of us. Why are we seeing such massive backlash? It's really uncannily similar to the backlash we're seeing relative to Israel. And I think these are all very connected, because we're sort of seeing an administration that's taking our taxpayer money, our resources, our economic and political capital, and putting it into directions that seem to have nothing to do with this country, nothing to do with us who are mostly economically struggling, facing economic insecurity, and really nothing to do with actual citizens of a country. And I think AI is front and center, and data centers in all of that. I mean, I remember, man, several years ago, I was on with y'all with JR, I miss JR, and Anna, and we were talking about ChatGPT, and I was sort of warning about it in the sense that, like, I was like, what is this all for? And I'm letting y'all know that this is an incredibly costly direction we are going down, and we need to know what the costs and the actual benefits are. And at that time, we were all, that was pretty early days, but now we're seeing it through and through. Because why is that? These so-called generative AI systems feed off our data. No one around the world, and certainly Americans, are paid for their data. It's all built on the surveillance of all of us, which is what most Americans are not interested in, being surveilled, let alone having their lives captured to train machines that are potentially going to replace us. That's a parasitical relationship, right? So many people are being forced to install AI systems, run on these data centers to actually monitor everything they do, to potentially replace them and make their work and the social contract of their work less and less stable or secure. So what are these data centers? It's the way big tech functions. It's all run, the so-called cloud is a bunch of BS. It's basically run by these machines that take astronomical amounts of energy. They are very polluting. They make a lot of noise. They're trying to dump them onto indigenous and other lands, like in the United States, like in Arkansas and other spots like that. And they are very relevantly, just like we're seeing with the Iran war, driving up people's utility costs, because we are competing with these data centers for the costs around power and electricity. And the president, check this out, says that these data centers are and should be, which is what we're seeing, run by clean, beautiful coal. Clean, beautiful coal. So for those of us who don't want America to remain somewhat beautiful, we're wondering what the hell is going on. So that's why we're seeing this backlash, because they're also competing with us for fresh water, not salinated water, not ocean water. So, and on top of it, people who have their money in investments, which is almost none of us, because no one's making money and being able to make more and more money these days, are all realizing this is likely a bubble, because trillions of dollars have been put into this industry with about 50 million in revenue so far. So everyone is wondering what the heck is going on. So that's what these data centers are. They are directly competing with us and our lives, because we're right now looking at a point where it's either corporate owned machines or us. Corporate owned machines or us. That's the choice we're staring at right now as Americans and people around the planet. And that's why we're seeing widespread backlash.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the guy in charge right now is himself corporate owned, Donald Trump. He was surrounded by all of the tech oligarchs at the inauguration who bought his ass. And that is why he has done everything to give them what they want. And this dog and pony show that he's doing right now as he goes around like, oh, I'm gonna protect your electricity rates and everything. Let me tell you briefly about it. So it's the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It flips the incentives that have led to these data centers raising your electricity rates. If a hyperscaler wants the power, they pay for the power, the generation, the delivery, and the grid upgrades that come with it. It spans every party that plays a role in building, powering, and regulating data centers, more than 200 organizations across 4 stakeholder groups. And then let me see if I can summarize the rest of these next 2 graphics. Blah, 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 blah. It's optional. It's optional. There's no enforcement mechanism. They're not legally required to do this. And when they don't do it, there will be no consequences. When Donald Trump is willing to send jackbooted thugs into the streets to gun down American citizens. If he wanted this to be enforced, he would have it be enforced. This is to waste your time. This is to make you think something is being done in the critical years that these tech oligarchs think they need to build up enough data centers for whatever it is that they're going to do. And once they've done it, it's too late and there's nothing you can do about it. And by the way, just a small note, even if this was a real thing and it wasn't gonna raise your electricity rates, you still wouldn't want the data centers in your area for 1,000 different ways. As you pointed out, there's the water component, there's the sound component, the destruction of your property value component, and of course the pollution. Elon Musk in particular is facing lawsuits because he's basically strapped the jet engines from dozens of planes just burning fossil gas and polluting communities. And Donald Trump will say, everybody, actually, why don't we play one more video? I have a second video of him saying something absolutely ridiculous about data centers. Take a look.
Other nations are trying to get us to slow down, and they're spending a lot of money on propaganda, on press, PR, trying to convince everybody that this isn't a positive thing. And if we don't do this, we're going to be left behind. And even communities compared to other communities. You have some communities that really want this. This isn't all negative stuff. You have communities that really want the data centers. And frankly, those are the smart communities because it means tremendous numbers of jobs, very little actual disruption.
Yeah, everybody wants a community to be polluted and all that. Hey, why don't you build one outside Mar-a-Lago? Why don't you do that? Since you love it so much. Why is it that Elon Musk builds his Grok AI centers around the country, but not near his house? It's weird how that works out. No, we don't want it. It doesn't contribute anything. First of all, they get massive tax breaks. It doesn't even contribute. There's no jobs. There is literally no industry. There's no physical infrastructure that requires fewer ongoing jobs than data centers. And he'll fearmonger. We're gonna get left behind. On what? What are we gonna get left behind? Yes, I will acknowledge every restaurant's signs are now produced by ChatGPT. It's a fabulous new technology in that way. Other than that, we're years into this thing. What is it actually doing? It's producing basically nothing. Epic, apocalyptic levels of theft. Every one of these tech oligarchs should be rotting in prison for the biggest scale theft of intellectual property the world has ever seen. And for what, Ramesh?
Exactly, and he is saying, I mean, just check this out directly, right? We are in some race toward what? Right? And look at what these tech oligarchs actually see as the future of our planet, the future of our country. Many of them have bunkers. Mark Zuckerberg built several floors under the HQ, the Meta, like Facebook HQ underneath Palo Alto, like the office under Palo Alto. They believe in an apocalypse that they think they themselves are creating. It's such a weird thing. They are so into sci-fi and they don't understand the lessons of sci-fi. They're doomers. And so this is their direction that they want to take us. I remember just day 3 of this administration. Some of you may remember this. Trump was arm in arms with Larry Ellison and Sam Altman from OpenAI and with Project Stargate, saying this would create tens of thousands of jobs. Has that happened? Where are those jobs?
Yeah.
In fact, we in the California State Senate and Assembly have been working with people to try to regulate and rein all of this in. But guess who has been trying to stop that? The president with his executive orders. So it's really all for nothing. And it's a complete scheme that seems like back in the day, this would just be some sort of weird little deviant sort of issue. But this is where all the money and investment and power is going. And it's basically being all used to replace us. That's a parasite. It's a parasite relationship that these AI systems actually are. They are feeding off us to replace us. And I've been talking about this for years, and I'm a former AI developer. It's an incredible reduction and a flattening also in our own intellect, in our minds. People literally do not read or write any longer because they have machines doing that for them. But that's all based upon colonizing our minds, grabbing our attention, and sending us down these sort of nihilist rabbit holes. And that is not the purpose of technology. It never was supposed to be what the purpose of artificial intelligence was about in any facet whatsoever. But this is where this administration is taking us. They're taking us, leading us to slaughter right here with this one.
The world would be so different if any of these massive idiots had any reading comprehension whatsoever. They grew up on Lord of the Rings and sci-fi, which same, by the way, but I actually learned something from it, and they seem incapable of it. And the last thing I want to mention is people hate this, and the tactic that they're using, Trump was using it in that video, is oh, you only think you hate data centers because of propaganda or whatever. Yeah, let's see how that works for you. No, we hate it. Lots of politicians are starting to wake up. The AOC was doing her trip down to Georgia or whatever. She's got her bill to stop data center construction until protections are put in place. This is going to be an increasingly big issue. I'm hoping / thinking 2028 is going to be one of the things that helps determine who wins the Democratic primary. And Donald Trump doesn't see it or doesn't care. He's getting paid so much, and his owners are getting paid so much, maybe he doesn't care. But Republicans hate the data centers too. Independents hate the data centers. And they're just, I guess they're hoping that we're just gonna sit idly by and let it happen or whatever. And I hope that that's not the case. Okay, we have a little bit of time. One more story. It is unfortunately a negative one, so buckle up for that, but let's jump into this. A series of stabbings this week in New York have prompted concern among city residents as a wider trend of an increase in hate crimes has been noted. 2 individuals were stabbed in Manhattan's Upper West Side just yesterday. And we do have some information about the stabbing already. The assailant was identified as Raul Morales, attacked 2 men in separate incidents in Central Park West and Amsterdam Avenue yesterday afternoon, leaving them both wounded. Both thankfully were expected to survive, which is obviously the good part of this story. The victims have also been identified. The first is a 57-year-old Asian man named Chok Sung, a 50-year-old Jewish man named Moshe Yezek Grunhaus, I believe, was also stabbed. Thankfully, again, both should survive. Now, witnesses at the scene of both of the stabbings say that they heard him yell Allahu Akbar, leading people to believe that this was intended to be and was in fact a series of hate crimes. One of the victims, as we said, was Jewish, and Thursday was a Jewish holiday of mourning. So it's believed that maybe the attack was timed to that. And at the start of July, the number of confirmed hate crimes in 2026 had risen nearly 8% from the same period a year earlier. So this is part of at least somewhat of a trend. There were apparently hate crimes being investigated in both Brooklyn and Queens as of earlier this week, involving anti-Muslim statements and an assault in which the assailant made anti-Semitic remarks. So it looks like a variety of different types of hate crimes are on the rise. About half of the attacks this year targeted Jewish people, making anti-Semitic violence the largest individual share of hate crimes in the city. So obviously a terrible trend. Thankfully, in these most recent attacks, it didn't result in anyone dying, but still, you don't want to see this happening. And the mayor did address the attack, saying, "I've been briefed on today's horrifying stabbings on the Upper West Side, where an Asian man and a Jewish man were attacked." According to the statements, he references the Allahu Akbar. He says, "I'm relieved that both victims are in stable condition. The NYPD responded immediately and arrested Raul Morales in connection with both assaults. I'm grateful to the officers for their swift response. The initial investigation suggests that mental health may have been a factor. They're also evaluating these stabbings as potential hate crimes. These hateful and despicable attacks have no place in our city. And there is that ongoing investigation to see what the actual motivation was. The police commissioner said that it's currently being evaluated. The detectives were investigating. And while Mr. Morales did not have a history of mental health issues documented with the department, it appeared that his mental state might have played a role in the attacks. But again, that doesn't rule out it being a hate crime. It can be a combination of both of those things, I suppose. Now, in response to this, if you thought that this wasn't going to have a political angle, it does. Representative Dan Goldman tweeted, "I have no doubt that there will be many well-written social media posts condemning the anti-Semitic stabbings on the Upper West Side today. And I'm sure many people's thoughts and prayers will be with the victims and their families. But these statements ring hollow when so many in the city normalize anti-Semitism, including simply by associating American Jews with the actions of the Israeli government. Enough is enough." Now, he is a representative. He lost his primary. He won't be one for much longer. I am glad that he is saying that we should care about, well, it looks like he cares about one of the two stabbings that happened. For some, I don't know why the other one didn't merit his tweet or whatever. Maybe he'll tweet separately about him. I don't know. I don't know. He doesn't say specifically what the associating American Jews with the actions of the Israeli government are. I can't speak for Dan Goldman. I know that generally when people say that, they mean shut up about your criticisms of the Israeli government. I personally think maybe this is crazy. I think we can criticize the Israeli government and say that hate crimes are terrible and shouldn't happen of any kind, including anti-Semitic hate crimes. I don't know, maybe you need to choose. I don't know, Ramesh, what do you think?
I mean, I think we can take it a step further, man. We could also say that the actions of the Israeli government, backed by our government, has led to an increase in anti-Semitism and to an increase in potentially, at least correlation-wise, violence against Jewish people. Though I think the question should be, we should be against hate crimes against anybody and everybody, especially recognizing that the actual terrorism that is on the rise in the United States is white supremacist domestic terrorism, despite what our administration is doing, which is trying to attack the left and calling it terrorist, attacking Muslims, this and that, and the normal scapegoating, right? But this is what happens when a nation faces despair, right? When we sit through a time of despair, and the word I just keep coming back to is nihilism, where people don't know what to believe, they don't know who to trust, they just know that their lives are not what they thought they should be. People are working hard and just not able to make the basic needs. And many people, absolutely, as Mayor Mamdani mentioned, are facing steep mental health issues. So that doesn't excuse or justify any of this. It's actually so freaking repugnant. But at the same time, we have to understand these are symptoms and consequences that emerge out of a situation where a nation is feeling quite sick and ill. I mean, I was not long ago, John, in Canada, like I was mentioning, and I was watching Hassan, our buddy Hassan Piker, talk with Gabor Mate, the psychiatrist, and Gabor Mate was basically saying that that we are sick, we're not well right now as a nation, and this is what's going to occur as a result of all of this. So we got to condemn it on every level whatsoever, but we got to recognize that when foreign states commit acts of terror, it can actually end up impacting all of us here in the United States as well.
Yeah, and I think that sickness comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes individual hate crimes, threats, mass shootings. Thank God this guy didn't have a gun. It could have been significantly worse. The last thing I wanted to mention is there's been a lot of criticism trying to tie criticisms of Israel into these hate crimes. I guess the anti-Muslim hate crimes just don't matter. We're not going to talk about them. This is the only one that matters. Okay, I think they're all bad. The UJA Federation of New York said that the attacks were bad, says that it's a hate crime, which it might well be. And then attached say, words have consequences, particularly words from the mayor of New York. These attacks came soon after Mayor Mamdani once again used his official platform to viciously attack Israel, the only Jewish state. And then they go on. So I guess the idea is that the hate crimes are bad, but Mamdani shouldn't have a problem with genocide. You know what I think? You know what the worst hate crime is? Genocide, actually. When you hate not just an individual or a group, so you want to kill an individual, but when you want to wipe out or cleanse an area of an entire group. If stabbing a person is bad, one would think blowing a person up is also bad. Dropping buildings on families is bad. Burning them alive, shooting babies in the heads with sniper bullets. Like, why can't we hate all of this? Why can't all of this be bad? Stop killing people for just like a little while and let us get a handle on all of this. But no, condemn the stabbing. Shut up about the genocide. Shut up about the bombings. Shut up about, I mean, I guess if a person in Gaza gets stabbed, that you don't have a problem with that, but have a problem with this. I personally think that consistency is a good thing generally, and so I aim for that. Any final thoughts, Ramesh?
Yeah, John, that some AI companies are boasting on training their AI models on people in Gaza, on crisis situations. They're saying our value of our AI product is increased because of genocides being committed, because they're calculating all the data and they're selling it as a package and a service to other sorts of organizations. So I've seen this with the National Health Service. They're attempting to tie the mayor who has spoken, I think, very courageously against any genocidal act to all of this in this loose and dirty way. And it's just not gonna stand. We have a very clear moral calculus that we can all stand for. You just said it so directly, John. We should be against the murder of anyone innocent. We should be against the harm and violence against anyone innocent. Doesn't matter who they are or what they look like or where they are in the world. We're just all people, man.
100%. Yeah, and my final thought is it is tough to engage mentally with all of the horrors going on in our country and around the world. The people who are watching this video are a special breed, and it's difficult and it takes a toll. But I think that, I don't know, like if you want to be a fully realized moral person, you should have a problem with those stabbings, and you should have a problem with, I don't know, like a school of 140 Iranian schoolgirls getting blown up. Like you should have a problem with both of those things, and you should speak out against both of those things. Okay, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have, Ramesh. It is always a pleasure to have you here, and in particular, you giving us your time in the middle of the night on your trip. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I love you guys, so I'm happy anytime. I can't wait to be back on, and I'm so happy to join you all today or tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your trip. There is more to come on the other side, so don't go anywhere. Another hour of the Young Turks comes up after this.
Woo!
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Nina Turner. It's Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chuck.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be
talking to?
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated? Or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is wobbly, that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both worked to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on, honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making that.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy experience. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second hour of the Young Turks. I'm Yasmin Aaliyah Khan, and joining me is Jackson White. Jackson, how are you tonight?
I'm a special type of fantastic, because look, I came back to Los Angeles and I'm in a haunted hotel tonight. I'm sleeping in a haunted hotel 2 nights in a row because I'm crazy and I'm fun like that. I'm putting together a film project. I'll tell you more about it later. But
yeah, I do actually want to hear more about that. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though. It's a historic site in Santa Paula, California. I've been here before.
And you didn't see any like suspicious activity the first time you were there?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know. I'll have to tell you about it later.
Maybe you did.
Because I came, the first time I came, I was with a group of people and we was trying to find some crazy, spooky stuff.
Okay.
Some of us had different, clashing opinions.
Yeah,
By
you
the
should
way,
come
no,
down to where I am. There's a lot of that stuff around here, down in Galveston. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be one of the most haunted cities in the country. I've done like cemetery tours. There's a lot of haunted houses. There's one hotel that's supposed to be especially haunted, but there's like a few around there.
Makes
So
sense though, because all the treachery that went down in the Southwest.
there's a lot that went on down in Galveston specifically. So, but we do have a lot of stories to get to. I do want to hear about your ghost stories later, but for now we have a lot of other things to talk about. What are we talking about? We're talking about Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro. We have Thomas Massie versus Pete Hegseth. We have Khanna on CNN. And then we have some like weird stuff in the bonus episode. So stick around for that. But we are going to get right into our first story. So let's roll it.
Here's, I think, the question we have to ask genuinely. Is this president America first or is he Israel first? Because he's going to pull back a deal.
Come on.
Because he's going to pull back a deal first where we have had a non-proliferation policy and he's giving Saudi Arabia nuclear weapons while he's allowing them to produce enriched uranium, which we didn't do with UAE. And he's saying that he doesn't want Iran to have that. And then the condition is not go invest in Pennsylvania or go invest in Michigan. The condition is that he wants them to recognize Israel without him recognizing a Palestinian state. Like, why does any American want that to be the condition?
All right, well, as you just saw, Representative Khanna was ruffling some feathers on CNN last night by calling out Donald Trump and his deference to Israel. He made a lot of people uncomfortable, including Abby Phillips, it looks like there. So let's give you a little bit of context on what he's talking about. So this week, Donald Trump, he announced that the US was going to permit Saudi Arabia to develop civilian nuclear infrastructure in their own country as long as the Americans are the ones who are building that infrastructure. And at first, that was not contingent on Saudi Arabia and normalizing relations with Israel. That wasn't a good thing. But then less than a day later, Trump retroactively made that part of the deal. And that is likely because Israeli officials were furious that they were not cut into the deal, okay? So Israeli Heritage Minister Amiki Eliyahu of the far-right Otzma Yehudit party stated this. He said, "We will do as much as we can in the international arena and in our foreign policy to halt the possibility that in the Middle East, a certain country, because we can't rely on it for a long term, has a nuclear weapon." So Israeli opposition lawmaker and former defense minister Avigdor Lieberman, he raged about it and he posted this. This is from the Times of Israel. He said, "Everyone needs to understand that the Saudi civilian nuclear program will end up with nuclear weapons and lead to a mad arms race across the entire Middle East. The Israeli government must act decisively against the American Congress to stop the process." And then he called on Jerusalem and pro-Israel groups like AIPAC and others to fight the pact and convince Congress to vote against it, even if it means splitting the US President Donald Trump or splitting with Trump. "We need to be firm and not stutter," is what he said. So all of that aside though, here is a little bit more of Khanna, and he is blasting Trump for once again bowing to Israel. Let's watch.
You have an American president who is signing off in the Congress on the integration of our military with the Israeli military.
I think that's a bit of
Section 219 and Section 214.
There's already military collaboration.
No, we don't have that with any ally. You have the American people who have been upset at our unconditional aid to Israel, who are upset that we supported Israel and what they did in Gaza.
There's been a lot of conditions, and the President of the United States has applied a great deal of pressure.
By the way, this is Republicans and Democrats, both who have that view. And now you have the President of the United States saying to the Saudis, we're going to allow you to have nuclear energy, but the only condition is you've got to recognize the state of Israel without recognizing a Palestinian state. It's just out of touch with what would bring peace in the Middle East or the American people where they are on the issue.
It's out of touch with the American people is what he said. Jackson, there's a little bit more, but I do want to get your insight on this a little bit. Do you remember September 11th? Do you know why that happened? It's because the American companies were building infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and they didn't like it. They didn't like that we were there. They didn't like what we were doing over there. Also, all this talk with Iran having a nuclear weapon, but as long as it's Saudi Arabia, who I guess we're cool with, then that's fine. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I've been up for 2 days, so my filter is a little inhibited right now. I'm just like this whole ecosystem and infrastructure of political discourse is a joke. CNN has the worst roundtable talks possibly on television. Like, these people aren't serious. Why are we trying to give credence to the Trump administration for anything whatsoever? Like, oh, that's too far to say that he's beholden to Israel. Like, of course he's beholden to Israel. He's beholden to anyone who's willing to give him a dollar. All the pardons that he's done just because people have gone to his dinners and given him $300,000, $1 million, the billions that he's made since he's been in office. I mean, his corruption is legendary. I mean, if you want to be a corrupt crook, I guess he is the number one person to look up to, because this is really historical. But yeah, and then on the other side with Netanyahu, right? Him and Donald Trump are two singular individuals who only care about what they want, so much to the point that they're willing to destroy the world for it. And there's really no arguing that. So I just don't have much patience for anybody in the Democratic diaspora who isn't just fully fighting against the fascism and the ridiculousness and the craziness that we have in this country right now. Like, all of them need to go. The Van Joneses of the world. I'm a progressive, but let's not actually like. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, but I'm also tired of these people. And so I think that we should, all of us, do our best to stomp them down. Obviously, I mean that hypothetically and politically, but it's time for them to shut up and just get out the way.
Yeah, I love that idea of a Democratic diaspora, because I feel like that would be us, right? The progressives are like Democrats who are displaced, don't really have much of a home, don't know who we are, what our identity is. That's an interesting term. But I do want to, there is a little bit more from that CNN panel that I want to show you guys. Part of that panel, they debated the Iran war, and Ro Khanna had some thoughts there, as well as Carla Sands, who ironically works for the America First Policy Institute. So let's check that out.
We just voted to again stop the war in Iran this morning in the House. But what has the president achieved? He's driven gas prices up. He's driven food prices up. The enriched uranium is still in Iran. They have a more extreme regime because the sun isn't even saying what Khamenei did, which was we won't develop nuclear weapons. The IRGC is stronger. They have more control over the Strait of Hormuz, and Americans are being killed. And the American people are saying this is worse than just a moral crime. It's a blunder. And you promised to end foreign wars, and you're getting us into this mess. You're failing.
Carla, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I shook my head because, President Trump is doing what no American president did since Jimmy Carter. He's actually taken on this murderous regime, the Mueller regime, the IRGC. These are revolutionary nuts, and they're killing their own people, and they've killed American soldiers throughout the world for decades. President Trump is the first president to say, you know what, it may cost me politically, but I'm going to do the right thing. He's done this in Venezuela. He's working on this in Cuba. He's working around the world to make the United States, the people, safe.
Jackson, is that what he's been doing this whole time? He's been working to keep all of us safe from what? I don't know. He can't really tell us, from the Iranians having nukes, I guess, and that is our problem for some reason. It feels like it's not. It feels like it's Israel's problem, if it is a real problem.
I mean, yeah, see, that's what it is. This whole time we have just failed to appreciate how courteous he is and how much he tries to keep us all out of trouble. I mean, we're all like that sometimes. Sometimes we can take things for granted. It's a human trait. But on a more serious note, all the, this woman is playing the game of don't tell me what I don't want to hear. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that. I'm a rich white person. I want the world to stay really safe and really white. And I don't want to see black and brown people. And I don't want to see women making money. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Of course, Donald Trump has absolutely no clue what he's doing. No clue what he's doing. This dude set up an MOU and then broke it instantly, not because there's some type of grand strategy to keep them from developing nukes, which of course they weren't doing under Obama. Now the war has gone to controlling the Strait of Hormuz, which why are we trying to do that in the first place? We're charging a toll now. You were just saying that that's against international law, right? And Donald Trump, we're back in this war because Donald Trump's ego's hurt and he's embarrassed because he looks like the stupid idiot that he is. So some of the reason I'm going so hard on this right now too, one, we're going into a midterm election, so we need the fire. But also, like, these people are done. They have nothing to sell. They have no credibility. Like, they're done. They're finished. MAGA is over. They still in office, unfortunately, but it's done.
I mean, yeah, that is a pretty significant caveat. They are still technically in power, but it is encouraging that they're losing a lot of support the way that they are. I know that in the first hour, John was talking about that, about how insanely disliked Donald Trump is. His approval rating keeps going lower and lower, historically low. I feel like that's happened several times over already since his second term in office. And that is saying something. That's saying that even as so many American people still shut their eyes to whatever's going on in the world or even here at this country, they are feeling things and they're at least willing to acknowledge that Donald Trump is somewhat partially responsible for it, okay? And I feel like a few years ago, that wasn't so dependable, that wasn't so reliable, because so many of his supporters especially, and I know that his supporters are not all Republican voters, but his supporters, they don't know what's going on. They think that he's doing a great job. They can't tell you anything that he's done that is good, but they feel like he's doing a great job. And they feel as though the Democrats, if they did get into power again, they would make things worse than they are right now. Somehow, all the promises that Donald Trump broke when he came into office, from the promises that he made while he was on the campaign trail, all of those promises that he broke, they'll forget all about it. As soon as there's another Democrat in power, then they're gonna be mad at the Democrat for doing not nearly as much bad things as Donald Trump has done to them. And Donald Trump is also, he's not subtle about these things, right? He comes out and he says point blank, I'm not worried about your affordability crisis, if you even want to call it a crisis. He doesn't even believe that it is a crisis, right? He is keen to make prices go higher and higher. He just put more tariffs on more countries. He put tariffs on Canadian lumber. Like, we don't need to build houses because we don't have a housing crisis. Like, it's so completely detached from the needs and the wants of the American people. And just the fact that we're doing anything in the Middle East at all is completely detached from the needs and wants of the American people. More Americans right now than ever are not supportive of Israel. And we certainly don't like seeing all of our money going to this conflict that Congress never approved, that the American people do not and have never supported. We are tired of it. And now we're gonna go build civilian nuclear infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. So I can't imagine that people were gonna be happy about this one either. All right, on that note, we're gonna take our first break. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome to the social break. We're gonna check out some of your comments and see what you guys are saying over there. Over at tyt.com, Mr. Guapo says, I wish those CNN talking heads would stop bringing up America as police to the rest of the world. F off already. Yeah, F off. Same. I feel the same way. CB1 says, never underestimate a Republican's ability to find ways to lick boots. Yeah, that's true. I think it's easy to forget how good they are at that. They love to do it. Like they love to do it. I saw a post and they were talking about how the United States is one of the only, really major developed countries that doesn't have any form of like universal or free healthcare in the world. And it was like the comments were crazy there, but maybe they were all bots. There's always that. Dirge says maybe Trump is taking the obesity crisis by making sure no one can afford food. He's tackling the obesity crisis. Yeah. A lot of people are losing weight. People are probably going to get a lot healthier because fish right now is a lot cheaper than beef, so it's better for your heart. Get your omega-3s in, and also get your protein. Bloated egos.
Type of person.
Yeah. I mean, I eat a lot of salmon. I like salmon. I like cod. I like to cook. I eat tofu also, though. So there's that.
I'll be eating oysters while I'm here in California.
Welcome back to the Young Turks. You have Yasmin and Jackson with you tonight, and we have a few more stories. And then I hope you stick around for the bonus episode because we will be there too. All right, so let's get into our next story. Yesterday, Tucker Carlson called Ben Shapiro a little freak for pushing Donald Trump to escalate the war with Iran. And that's a really funny thing. I think we should bring that back. I think we should start calling people freaks again. We'll get to Carlson's comments in just a moment. But first, we're gonna hear from Ben Shapiro. So in yesterday's edition of his show, Ben Shapiro argued that the American people do not actually oppose the Iran war in principle. They only oppose it because we're not winning hard enough. That's what he said. Let's watch.
Laura Ingraham says the American people are done with war, won't fight it, won't fund it, won't support it, and that this new isolationism is going to win. And it might win, but that kind of thinking is dramatically wrong. It's the kind of wrong that destroys countries, that destroys America. Listen, I get why people feel the way they do. I feel that way. I get it, okay? Gas prices are high. Families are stretched thin. Folks are looking at the grocery bill and their rent. They're thinking, why on earth are we spending blood and treasure halfway around the world and not even getting to the end point? No one in America wants American casualties. It's a tragedy and a horror. We do understand that war does come along with casualties, and we are willing to undergo those casualties in pursuit of an end and a victory for America. But as far as the idea that, for example, America, we can't hit Kharg Island because the Iranian people would then be deprived of oil resources. The American people are, I should say, not particularly concerned about that. We are far more concerned with why we're there not winning.
We're concerned with why we're there at all. We still don't really know. They still won't really tell us. And we keep winning. That's what they keep telling us, right? They keep saying that we're winning, that we've destroyed their Navy. I've lost count how many times we've destroyed their Navy by now. I've lost count of how many times we've taken over the Strait of Hormuz. It's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed, it's open, it's closed. It's very hard to keep track of. So it's very hard to support something when you don't even know what's going on or what they want to happen over there. So we're gonna hear more from Ben Shapiro because he actually has a proposal for how to win the war in Iran. I don't know why he's not higher up in his career because he seems to have some advice, some thoughts.
In reality, always and forever, there are only three real possibilities. And those possibilities stack up to only one choice. The first possibility is you go fast and you go hard and we win. That means that we bomb their nuclear facilities into dust. We bomb Kharg, we bomb South Pars. We put the regime on its last legs. We destroy their oil fields and their capacity for refineries. We force open the strait. The president wanted to do this. You remember, he tried to do this for one day.
Sure, let's just do all of that. Also, I don't like him talking about going fast and hard. I don't like that. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Little
and I wish he
boy.
I wish he would not say that. Yeah, maybe that's why he called him a little freak. We're gonna find out. Like there's something there, maybe.
Hey, well, you know about them Republicans, man. They
There's
like
nothing
to get
good.
down. They act like they don't like to get down, but they do.
Why do they act like why is that a thing for them? You know, like that's a weird thing to be your
Because
thing.
the inner voice in their head is judging them.
Yeah. It must be tough living like that, honestly. So, well, Ben Shapiro, he did have he stated that the other two options that were on the table, he had some other ideas. He had two other options. He said we could respond proportionally to Iran's attacks, which he believes would not work. So it's not really an option. Or simply we could just give up and leave, which he wasn't a huge fan of either. He doesn't like either of those ideas, and he doesn't want us to do any of that. He wants us to do exactly what he said in that clip. And maybe he's onto something, maybe not. What are your thoughts, Jackson?
Many of you may die, but it is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. That's what I heard when Ben Shapiro was talking about this.
Lord Farquaad.
Farquaad, and he's a little man too. I mean, like, and two, it's just like this is like some like Barstool Sports guys saying what Tom Brady should have done in the Super Bowl 10 years. If I was him, I would have done that. Like I'm 6'6", right? 6'7", whatever, depending on what type of shoes I got on. So oftentimes my whole life, people will be like, oh, if I was as tall as you, I would have went pro. Like, no, you wouldn't have. Well, first and foremost, you're not as tall as me, so shut up. And two, a few more inches would not have greatly improved your capability to move your body. In fact, it probably would have made it even worse. So don't get ahead of you. This is Ben Shapiro in this situation. All we have to do to win the war, I'm Ben Shapiro. I know what we should do. Like, no, you don't, Ben. Your little fantasy of a greater Israel is not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So that's what you want. But your own audience doesn't want that. But he doesn't care because he has a point to make because he's Ben Shapiro. And that's all this is, right? But the reality is the Iran war is lost. It's over. There is nothing that the United States can do except take the L, as we often have to do in life as adults, except the country is not being ran by adults, so these types of decisions aren't being made. If it was, we wouldn't be in this situation at all to begin with, but that's the reality. The only thing that we can do at this point is concede to what Iran wants. That's it. Just like in Vietnam and other situations like that, yeah, we can blow them up every single day, but they have something worth fighting for. They have something worth dying for. We do not. And the tides won't change. So it's just, it's a lost cause. And unfortunately, nobody knows how this is going to come to a close because Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth can't take an L. So they're probably just going to keep this dragging on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are losing our lives over there, and we don't know what we're dying for. We don't know what we're fighting for. They still haven't told us or given us a really good enough reason as to why we're over there at all. And you're absolutely right. There are no adults in charge right now. The people who are in charge are incompetent, and that was by design. They were put there because they were incompetent and because they would just do whatever Donald Trump wanted them to do. They have no conscience for the American people or for the planet or for people of other countries, certainly not. And they just want to do whatever it is that will make them the most money. It's no coincidence that the Trump sons are invested in all these weapons manufacturing companies, and they're invested in testosterone injections. And then Pete Hegseth is like, we're going to inject our military with testosterone. It's all a huge thing. It's all for money. It's all money making. It's all about power consolidation, and they don't care about any of us. So everything that they tell us is really just telling us something to tell us something. They don't care. But before I get too far ahead of myself, Tucker Carlson had some words responding to Ben Shapiro. It was a Twitter thread, an X thread, and it's all very entertaining. So I will show it to you right now. He started off saying, obviously, this little freak could go volunteer to fight the war himself, but of course he won't. He's got no interest in making any kind of personal sacrifice. None of them do. Israel's finance minister bragged the other day that having American soldiers fight Netanyahu's wars is the best for us. Smotrich doesn't want to die for Israel. Neither does Ben Shapiro. Dying for Israel is your job. You've got to wonder how people like this, liars without honor, wisdom, or loyalty to the United States, wound up in positions of such profound influence throughout our society. How did Mark Levin get the president's cell phone number? Why is Admiral Brad Cooper, the man in charge of the Iran war, secretly taking strategic advice from crazed Israel shill Mark Dubowitz? It's all so nuts and ultimately suicidal. Future generations will struggle to understand it. In the meantime, Trump will likely obey Ben Shapiro, as he has consistently for months. We can predict the results because every neocon victory is identical. Huge numbers of innocent people killed, disproportionately Christians, economic destruction, famine, mass migration, and deepening authoritarianism at home. That's what they're demanding because that's what they want. What can we do to stop it? Apparently not much, but we can remember what happened and why so that history records the truth. Otherwise, when the war ends in disaster, as it inevitably will, Ben Shapiro will be able to blame it for you. To blame it for you? That's a weird ending. All right, so that was a lot that he had to say there. And Ben Shapiro responded. Here's what he had to say. Put it up for you. He just called it goy slop. That's it. That's all he had to say. Sure. And you know, like Ben Shapiro is wildly unpopular right now. He continues to do his show and give his advice. No one's listening to you except for like us, I guess. You know, like we're listening, but not seriously, not with any kind of respect for what he has to say over there. So Jackson, what are your thoughts on everything Tucker Carlson just had to say? And I guess on Ben Shapiro's response to that, and you know, there's not a whole lot there to work with.
So, what was it? I can't the comedian. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now because I've been up for 2 days. But Tim Dillon, he said that these guys are in the business of content creation, and I think that you know, like he was specifically talking about RFK Jr. He was making fun of him for being out there with the yak, but that's very true. Whether it be the administration itself and who's actually in office, or Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, and people really not standing for any type of real meaningful progress in society, more than they just want to get attention online, more than they want to bicker back and forth openly with each other because it's getting them eyeballs. I mean, you know, there once were more gatekeepers in the world for people maybe who were like on the nightly news, and it's good that the gatekeepers are no longer there, but I think one of the negative side effects is now we're just in an environment where oftentimes the people who get the most attention, it might not last for that long, but often are the most kind of ridiculous people. And so that's a lot of what led us to where we are today. You muted.
Sorry, I'm a bad hostess sometimes. Sometimes I'm just not good at my job sometimes. But
It's
yeah,
all good. It's all right.
It's true though, right? Like it's all by design, you know, like no one is taking military advice or geopolitical strategy from Ben Shapiro, but he has to do it. He has to do his show and pretend that he knows more than everybody else. When he gets criticism in response, he just calls them a goy, like he calls it goy slop. It's just like, it's everybody is so unserious right now. And the fact is that we are destroying an entire civilization. We are killing people, we are bombing schools, and we are killing children. And we are complicit in similar activities elsewhere outside of Iran. We are doing all that. All of our money is funding that. Our weapons are going to that. And instead of just stopping all of it and having a real conversation, we're having to deal with just nonsense. And we're here infighting at home. We can't even have a real conversation about what's actually happening because we have been so divided that we can't even agree on what is actually happening. So that's where we are as a country. Hopefully, I don't know. It feels like things are starting to get better. Like it might start to like turn around a little bit, but every time I feel that way, then I'm reminded that like, no, we're still just as bad as we were. So I don't know.
I think we have opportunities at catching momentum. That's where change seems to happen. You got to catch the momentum when you got it.
Yeah, that also makes me nervous though, because I feel like if people can switch so quickly with their momentum, that they could also switch back. And switching back is a lot more comfortable. It's like if you're in a cult and you leave the cult and then you go out into the world and you're like, it's scary out here, you run back to the cult. So that's why, I don't know. I always say that, like, I'm not very optimistic, but I feel like I have hope. I try to be optimistic, but we'll see. All right, we're gonna take another break. We'll be right back with more.
I am scary. I am threatening. I'm Darth Vader.
Hey everybody, we got some comments. So I know we don't have much time in these breaks anymore. Okay, so let's see, over on Twitch. Ukami313 says, I thought the right were diehard F your feelings. So why are they feeling Trump is doing such a great job? They have a lot of feelings, okay? Maybe they just don't like to talk about them. Maybe they don't understand what feelings are. So they don't recognize what they're feeling as feelings, but they do have them. Like I don't know what the deal is, okay? Birdland Dragon says, this is a great combo, Yaz and Snackson. It is fun. It's always a good time doing a show with Jackson. No Math Dragon says Cuba could be a great neighbor if we weren't such giant, can I say that? A-holes? I don't know if I can say that. Yeah, I would love to go to Cuba. It seems nice. I don't know. Why can't we go? Why can't we go? There was a window of opportunity briefly when Obama was president, and I didn't optimize my opportunity. Xerox 6085 says, how much is she paid to tell these lies? Who are you talking about? I don't know who you're talking about. Is it me? They don't pay me enough to lie. So Ukami313 says, we never needed to stick our nose in their country's business. Screw you. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Eddie Raja 3115 says, they stole our secrets. They popped the USS Liberty and no doubt they instigated 9/11, talking about the Israelis. Be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We have a couple more stories for you. I hope we're going to be able to squeeze them in, but let's get right into this next one.
You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line, not the men and women who hold up their honor with distinction. But if there's a lack of a winning strategy, they're in harm's way. Their leaders have failed them. And that's what's happening. We have political leadership. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. Win the war. The men and women are going to be able to do it, but they need to have leadership. When will you show leadership? When will you show leadership? Why don't you show some leadership and stand up to your fellow Democrats who won't fund the troops?
So that was fun. Earlier this week, Secretary of War, as he likes to call himself, Pete Hegseth, really got into it with Democratic Senator Gary Peters after Hegseth's leadership was called into question. The leadership is what Hegseth's leadership is what got our servicemen and women killed. He is testifying there, or he's there appealing to Congress, asking for even more money to do war stuff. Right, and then they're like, you're not even good at war stuff, so why would we give you more money? So I do want to play another part from their exchange because Pete Hegseth seems to take Peter's comments very personally. probably because it was personal. He called him a failure. He said he was a failure as a leader. But the reality is that a lot of this is performative. So let's watch.
The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, reminding everybody it was open before the war. Prices were lower for everybody until the war, and it still remains closed. And of course, tragically, people, service members, our war fighters who we care deeply about, are still dying. So what's different? Mr. Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth.
I think your characterization of this incredible effort as a failure is reckless. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it smears the sacrifice of the troops that are out there making on behalf of the American people to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter. Either you do or you don't.
Secretary Hegseth, if you listen to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. And the word heard, I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure.
All right, so as fun as it was to watch someone call Pete Hegseth a failure to his face multiple times and then clarify, no, I was calling you a failure. Why do we say that this is performative? Because of this. Let's check out this headline from the New York Times. It says the number of US troop deaths suddenly appears lower on the Pentagon website. So they're lying to us. It says 3 military officials and a Pentagon spokesman gave conflicting explanations for why the number of Americans killed in the Iran war had changed. And even some Republicans like Thomas Massie think this has officially gone way too far. Jackson, I do want to get your thoughts on this real quick before we jump into the next part of this article and the reactions that all of this has garnered. But what did you think about that exchange between the senator and Pete Hegseth?
Well, honestly, that was one of the worst exchanges that I've seen anybody in the Trump administration make thus far in any type of hearing, which it's saying a lot because they've all been bad. You know, we watched what's the FBI dude's name, Kash Patel. We watched his disaster hearing, Pam Bondi, and Pete Hegseth has had hearings as well. But you know, this is, I think, just pretty enigmatic of how much everything really is falling apart. Like on the one hand, Pete Hegseth, because he works for Donald Trump, he has to say we're winning. He has to deflect. He has to do that. But he has to also know that we're not in good straits in this situation. You know, he goes in front of Congress and says, you know, don't ask me questions, just give me billions of dollars more. In addition to the $1.5 trillion. Kirsten Gillibrand, we didn't play this, but you know, part of her questioning was Americans are struggling to afford their groceries, pay their utilities, and you're asking for all this more money for a war that we don't want, and you're not even really telling us what you're gonna do with it. You know, real quick, I think one of the funniest notions to me is when Trump tries to insinuate that the Democratic Party doesn't fund the US military. Doesn't matter who's in office, the military gets funded. The Pentagon has failed, 6 audits? Because they just have all the money in the world and they're doing what they want with it. Like, how are we running out of munitions? How are we running out of munitions when we have the greatest funded military in history many times over by far? Because people are just taking the money and making deals and doing what they want with it. So this whole system is just a complete disaster, and that's a full reflection of it.
Yeah, and you have to talk about the audacity of Hegseth in that exchange there, because he was literally there asking them for even more money for his military, for his Pentagon, for whatever's going on in Iran. He went there begging for money, and they said, well, what have you done with the money that we've already given you? You already have so much money. What have you done with it? And he was unable to answer all those questions. And then when he was really called to put to task on it, he was like, you know what, you're a bad leader, you're bad at your job because you don't want to support the troops. That stuff doesn't work anymore. You can't call upon your patriotism and like your nationalism when you're asking for like $500 million or something like that. I don't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money that he wants. And how are you so defiant? Like, if you're asking anybody for money, is that usually the tone that you take with them? Do you usually call them a failure, tell them they're bad at their job, tell them that they're bad patriots, and then be like, now give me millions and millions and millions of dollars? Like that, it doesn't make any sense. The thing is, like, he tends to just get what he wants anyway, because Donald Trump is the one who wants this war to continue. He's the one who wants to continue to do whatever it is that they are doing over there, whatever it is that they need all these hundreds of millions of dollars more to do. So we'll see if anything actually comes of this, but it's not looking good. And then also the fact that they are changing the numbers on the website. Like, we can't trust anything that comes from this government, okay? So on that note, on Wednesday, the Pentagon reported on its official casualty website that 18 American soldiers were killed during the war in Iran. However, on Thursday, the number was lowered to 14. Okay, so I don't know how that happens. I don't know how people just come back to life. It's really sad that this is what's happening. There's no respect for the dead, especially not for these veterans, okay? So this is from the New York Times. It says 3 military officials said that one reason behind the change was that the Trump administration decided to remove 4 service members killed this past weekend from the list, 3 in Jordan and 1 in northern Iraq, because their deaths occurred after President Trump declared a ceasefire in the war in April. And you can see here the 4 soldiers who were removed from left to right. On the top row, you have First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, who was 25 years old, Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, who was 30 years old. At the bottom, you have Sergeant Angel Rampersad, who is 28 years old, and Private Isabella Gonzalez, who is just 19 years old. And yeah, their lives don't count, I guess. And according to the Pentagon's acting press secretary, Joel Valdez, this is just an error caused by temporary data disruptions on the website. It's always something like that, but people are not stupid, okay? And a lot of people are calling out Hegseth for this. Here is one from former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She posted to X, she said, the Department of War is not counting these American service members' deaths in the official tally of dead US soldiers from Trump's war against Iran, because they claim they were killed after Trump signed the MOU, even though we are bombing every day. This is repulsive. And Thomas Massie, he also had some thoughts on this. He said, let me explain this absurd ruse. The Pentagon is pretending there have been 2 Iran wars separated by a brief ceasefire. The reality is that by going more than 90 days without congressional authorization, the Secretary of War is breaking the law and must be held accountable. So the House did pass the War Powers Resolution for a second time yesterday, and the vote was 214 to 208, but it did fail 47 to 49 in the Senate. And as if that wasn't bad enough, here is how Trump honors these great soldiers. Let's take a look at this. He posted this to Truth Social. He said, these are the real facts, report them. And like, what even is this? This is ridiculous. Like, it's just like a weird bar graph, as if like it doesn't say anything, it doesn't mean anything. And this really is not the flex that Donald Trump thinks that it is. Because remember, both Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, this is according to from the New York Times, says they have both repeatedly said that their predecessors, President Biden, as well as Defense Secretary Lloyd J. Austin III, as well as Vice President Kamala Harris, was personally responsible for the deaths of 13 American service members in a suicide attack in Kabul in 2021. Also in 2024, Trump told Lex Friedman that these people should not have died. They died because of Biden and because of Kamala. They died just like if they pulled the trigger. That's an insane thing for him to say, especially in 2024, when he had already been the president. He knows how these things work, and he was trying to become the president again, okay? It's a very strange spin for him to put on that, because like, obviously that's gonna come back up, but he doesn't care about things like that, because he does things, he says things, he contradicts it, and his people, his supporters don't even notice. They don't see it, they don't care, they don't check, they don't, check the hypocrisy of any of it. So how is this any different though? Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they refuse to accept the reality of this actual war. They refuse to look at it. They're fudging the numbers. They're trying to make themselves look better, which is really despicable. This is a war. This is not a conflict like they keep trying to tell us it is. They just don't have authorization for it. This is an illegal war that we are in, and they're really just not being honest about anything that is actually happening in Iran or really in the Middle East in general. We don't know what's going on. We know that people have ulterior motives, that they're doing things for one reason, but they're telling us a different reason. And that's why the messaging is so all over the place, because the messaging is lies. And you know how hard it is to maintain a lie. The problem with this administration is that they usually don't go out of their way to maintain their lies. They just say one thing, they say something else, and if it contradicts, who cares? Not their supporters, so they don't care. What are your thoughts, Jackson?
Donald Trump is so lucky that his supporters are as stupid as he is. And the supporters he has left, because there have been a decent amount of people who have left him. But at this point, if you're still with him, I mean, Donald Trump, like he posts this picture, this graph where he thinks that this absolves him from the fact that he shouldn't have been in the Iran war in the first place. He treats it like it's some like petty interpersonal conflict that only impacts him. Like he's arguing with one of his little girlfriends or something. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't talk to you for one day. It could have been 3. Like people are dead, and not only are people dead, but this has implications for the way the entire world socioeconomic fabric exists at all. The world is changing because of what Donald Trump has done. And he's too stupid to realize that. He does all these things to try to get himself out of trouble, but really he's just trying to convince himself that he's everything that he says he is, because we know he's not. I mean, yeah, there's some people in the country who will ride or die for him no matter what, but everybody else sees through it. So it's just interesting how the whole world has to go through hell for the personal insecurities of a few men throughout history. People like Donald Trump, people like Adolf Hitler, like individuals who were stewing in personal insecurity, and they made a whole political movement out of it that crashed and burned because there's no foundation other than rage and insecurity. That's it.
Yeah, that's such a great point too, because if you study history at all, that really is just what a lot of what it is. It's just like insecure men, usually, most of the time, 99% of the time, insecure men who are mad about something. And so then they make it everyone else's problem. Like look at even Stephen Miller, like he's not up there with all these people, but he would like to be, he would like to have a significant impact on the world, on the American people, on whoever, just because like some brown girl in high school didn't want to go out with him. Like that's why we're all dealing with this. That's why
it really stems from stuff like that.
Yeah, it does, and it's so telling and it's so frustrating because we don't have any recourse to that. Go to therapy, I guess, but like is that going to help us right now? Probably not. You know what? I'm not going to get into what I was going to mention, but it is very frustrating to see all this and the fact that they're so bold and so emboldened by the Trump administration to just do whatever they want. All of this was very, very meticulously planned. This has been going on for a very long time, and this is kind of the apex of everything that they've been doing behind the scenes at the local levels, at the state levels, at the various different branches of government. All of that, it was to consolidate power so that now, not just the American people are without power to do anything about this. Even our protests seem to fall on deaf ears, even though we've had the largest protests, some of the largest protests in our country's history. But even in Congress, a lot of our Congress people have just been made completely useless, right? You have people like Cory Booker coming out being like, this is crazy. I know it's crazy. We all know it's crazy, but you're the one who's in Congress. You're supposed to be doing something about it. And to be fair, the Democrat, they have passed their War Powers Resolution Act twice now in the House. It doesn't make a difference though. Donald Trump just kind of ignores it and he just does whatever he wants to do anyway, especially this time it failed in the Senate. So like it's not going anywhere. So we are very frustrated. We're running out of options and we would like to do something about this. But what that course of action looks like right now is unclear. So on that note, we are going to wrap up this second hour of the Young Turks, but stick around because we have more for you in the bonus episode. Be right back.